RAF benevolent fund. Have you got any loose change?
No.
Once that's finished, we get her out the wrong way.
I should have finished up.
All right. Thanks for the delivery.
That's a cold weapon.
There's a light that hung up, no?
Yeah.
Everything seems lovely when you're all alone. The birds are singing, the tender leaves stray. I'll wait until they're much further away. Things won't seem so lovely when you're all alone. Here's what you can say.
Need some legs to help move people.
Basta avanti, no?
Very much the right, no? Wahnsinn, ne?
Echt?
Ja, da kommen die Deutschen.
Can we actually stop the people there, please? Please stop there, please.
that way. Go! Go!
Oh yeah.
To get the registration, they can get the insurance and everything.
Yeah, so I can get the insurance and.
Yeah.
That's not mine.
Coming up! Yeah, last time we ended up. Were you done today?
Also, something like that, there are people jumping over the safety barrier to get thankfully. Please do that. Those who are not to lie and very good, please get them
Right, the people behind you. Does it work?
the over-engineered that they could have produced almost 2 or 3 times as many of the smaller tanks for every one of the Tigers they produced. I don't know why he's going backwards, but he must have a plan. And the Land Rover. By the way, if you haven't bought your raffle ticket yet to try and win a Jeep, there are people coming around the crowd line trying to sell you one. Pay £1 and... Another one? Then the Ferret, Mark 1 and Mark 2. There's even even though they said tanks at play, I think a lot of them actually take it to be armour at play, so if it's got armour plates on, they seem to want to bring it into the arena. This tank coming in, the Comet. One of the more powerful English tanks of the Second World War, came into operation late 44. Gradually lining them up, more wartime stuff, more modern tracked rate here. Now have a very unusual M5 high-speed tractor, carrying a 5.5 gun. No, it's not 5.5, it's an 8-inch. I think.
So bad that it's good though. And still they come in another T-34. I think we're certainly up to 30 armoured vehicles in here. Now imagine that, they've all got the Allied stars on, so there you are, there's an American armoured battle group. The M5 half-track, built by International, is actually going out. I think he's probably got a heating problem or something, so we won't talk about it anymore. Coming in front of you though is the M18 Hellcat, an American tank destroyer. The Americans followed the Germans to a certain extent. When you've got a large gun, German trying to go over the mountain failing, but when you've got a large large gun, they can't always fit everything in the same hull. That's where we're now going to get a bit of tank manoeuvrability. The arena crews are all going out to help. Now in real life a Sherman driver would never want to be seen in that position. As if he was facing an anti-tank gun and shoot a hole straight underneath. But there you are. Good shot for all of you. A well-balanced Sherman. Yet even more coming in. Sexton self-propelled howitzer. M16 half-track. Another M5 half-track. It's almost too many to talk about. The little tank behind the half-tracks now is an M5 Stuart. Much earlier on you would have seen an M3 Stuart going in. That was pretty well obsolete by the beginning of the war. And eventually the Americans upgraded it, twin Cadillac engines, to the M5, which was much faster, better protected, but still only had a pea shooter 37mm gun. Oh, isn't it quiet? Lovely. The M5s were used by the Americans, and also they supplied them to the... Sometimes mockingly talk about Frenchmen dressed up as Americans all the time, but actually they're often dressed up as Free French, which is fair enough. If you notice, behind the Sherman there's a large sort of box where the exhaust is coming out of, hold them behind trucks and other half-tracks to make a sort of anti-aircraft battery. If you notice, the sides fold down so the gun has a complete traverse. For those of you who are interested, which there must be one or two, and trouble is probably the one or two know it already, the easy way of telling the difference between the white half-tracks and the international half-tracks is the rear end. The whites have got a square rear end, the internationals are rounded. The white scout car, first used by the Americans in Tunisia, and again supplied to most of the Allied armies. Not really much use, I can't think of a sensible use for it. Not really an armoured personnel carrier, a bit slow from the point of view of a reconnaissance vehicle, and not particularly armoured. Yes, if you look at the back of the M16 you can see what I mean about the square elite rubber tracks. So no runner up marking the roads. The only downside, I suppose, is the sort of 3 miles to the gallon they do. You should get bumped, or as the army call it, found out, or seen, or attacked. Then what happens is they lay down some fire with the armament they have on them and they get out as fast as possible. They can't stay and fight, they're just not heavily armoured enough. So the idea is you spray some rounds around, keep the enemy's head down while you get out as fast as you can. Now for this purpose, most of the CVRTs and the CVRWs, which just stands for Combat Vehicle Reconnaissance Wheeled, have reversible gearboxes. If you imagine your family car has 4, maybe 5 forward gears and 1 reverse, which you select quite happily. You can go quite fast forwards, but when you go into reverse, you can only go at a set speed. Turn, as it says, is when you put the gearbox in neutral and pull on a stick. This allows one set of tracks to rotate backward, one set of tracks to rotate forward, and the whole vehicle will then rotate on its own axis, so it can turn around in its own length. Most of the larger tanks only have skid steer. Neutral steer is a fairly modern feature and a very useful one on these machines. The Sand one we were talking about and a couple of the others are armed with a Radin rapid-firing cannon. Now that thing is able to lay down rounds. It will go through 2 feet of concrete quite happily. So that is able to keep the enemy's heads down while they make a hasty retreat. Although they look like small tanks, they are not tanks, they're not designed to fight, they are purely and simply reconnaissance or light support vehicles. Rolling around the centre of the arena, going over the bumps, you'll see two more CBRTs. Now they're all based on the same chassis, they all share the same track system and layout and the driving system. They also share the 4.2-litre 6-cylinder Jaguar engine. And they can all get up to around 45 to 55 miles an hour on the road and about 30 miles an hour cross country, although you wouldn't want to be anyone who's doing that. The reason the Army like to keep things on a similar basis is they change the shape of the top to fit whatever need it needs. So you've got reconnaissance, you've got recovery, you've got hospital, and the one just coming down the arena with the strange looking box on the back with blue-nosed rockets in it is a Striker rocket launch vehicle. When you have a whole series of vehicles that share common components, this means that your spares list can be much shorter. It also means that should a vehicle get hit or broken down, then other vehicles can scavenge parts from it to be kept running. The CBRT set has been in service with the military now since the 60s. The Scorpion tank is about the only one we can't see here. We've got the Scimitar, the Scorpion, the Salad, the Saracen, no, not the Saracen, sorry, the Striker. Then you've got the Samson. And the strange one coming down with the extremely large gun on it was a trial fit version for export purposes. It's the same hull and turret, but it's fitted with a 90mm gun. Now, as I said, that was for exploit the freedom that we do today. So it's always good to let them know that we appreciate what they went on our behalf. Now, while the Abbott's rolling around, you'll see that it's substantially larger than the CBRTs, and that's because it's not one. The Abbott is a self-propelled gun. It looks like a tank, sounds like a tank, drives like a tank, got a turret like a tank, got a gun. But it's not a tank. Mortar with the doors shut because everybody dies and the tank blows up. Now, coming down past the commentary box, you will see a tracked Rapier resupply vehicle. Now this is based on an M113 American chassis and it's designed to resupply the British Rapier missile system. On the back you will see lots of boxes in which would be stored the Rapier missiles themselves, and this vehicle was designed to go wherever the Rapier system went, resupply it and then go back and get some more. It's just like a tank, but with a truck body built onto the top of it. So if you want to know how to get the best out of your vehicles, you just bolt tracks onto the bottom. Now going over the bump in the middle is an odd looking thing, it's a very strange colours. Now that's a BB206 made by Haglund in Sweden. It's a Volvo. What can you say? It's a Volvo. It's got a Volvo engine in it. It's got a 4-track drive. It actually steers, unlike most of the tanks here, not by pulling on sticks. It's got a little steering wheel inside and hydraulic rams, which will actually twist the body from side to side. So it actually steers by bending itself rather than breaking the tracks on each side like in a normal tank. It's fully amphibious, designed as an over snow or over soft ground vehicle. There's just about nowhere it can't go. And one of its particular tricks is when it gets to a bump it doesn't like, it can actually fold itself in half by lifting the front and the rear of the vehicle at the same time, and then it can tiptoe. Just use famous Russian tank ever made. And there's two of them, a mating pair. These, if you didn't realise, are the Russian T-34. They're actually T-34-85 because they've got an 85mm gun. But when the Germans invaded Russia in 1941, these vehicles provided one hell of a shot to the advancing Germans. They were, really, in 1941, they were almost the advanced tank technology, as they were the first vehicles to introduce what became common with many, many other tanks, namely sloped armour. If you notice, a lot of the tanks you see today, the German ones in the reenactment, they're already boxes on tracks and with vertical sides. So if shells hit those vertical sides, they could burst through the 2 inches or 3 inches of armour and there'd be nothing to deflect. Whereas sloped armour, the shell could well hit the armour and just glance off. Or about all these well, all the Russian tanks really, one of the fuel tanks on the outside at the rear. Now you think, right, that's a very, very dangerous place to put your fuel. But for the hundreds of miles the tanks had to travel up to the front line, they had to have this to help with the refuelling. The idea was then to discard them before they went into action. The little vehicle coming along behind is an ATLM prime mover for towing infantry or carrying supplies. I must admit, the way you get brain dead after a time, I was keep on calling it an ATM, but of course that's a cash machine. I suppose you could call this a cash machine, as it keeps on swallowing money. But anyway, back to the T-34, and I was saying earlier about the crude build qualities of the Russian T-34. You look at the weld seams, very, very badly finished. Hold your ears, I think you might get a bang from this one. I won't do a countdown as we're not certain, but there might well be a bang. So all those that was a big bang, wasn't it, children? We think there might be another big bang. Did the earth move for you? Right, that's the end of the bangs from that one. The other thing you'll notice on this, the Russian tanks, are the grab handles all around. This is because one of the standard Russian practices was to carry the infantry up to the front line, hanging onto the tanks. So these tanks like that, possibly the name of the factory which the tank came from. But these vehicles soldiered on from 41 through to 45, were then dispatched to all the various Warsaw Pact armies, soldiered on, and some were seen in Ethiopia only a few years ago. These ones would have come from the Czech Republic or Poland. The ATLM, that came from the Czech Republic. That's really what the Russians built. They built for all the Warsaw Pact. But all these vehicles were built in the many, many tens of thousands. In the war, the artillery got larger and bigger, and the Americans had everything up to 240mm cannon, which there was nothing, lorries couldn't tow them. So they introduced this. It could pull most things. No protection for the crew. It would carry, as you can see, an open top, the engine's in the middle at the back, the gun crew would sit on each side. There he goes. Towing what we think is a standard British 5.5-inch howitzer. You notice the engine at the back, you can see the fan going at the back. The reconnaissance steward there with the machine gun on, that's marked up as part of 7th Armoured Division. Now 7th Armoured Division went up through Europe after D-Day, and these vehicles were at the forefront of most of the advances through France and Belgium. The early M3 Stuarts were used by the British in the Western Desert, where they were nicknamed the Honey, apparently because they were a honey to drive. But really, from the point of view of the gun, they were completely useless. A little 37mm pea shooter against the German armour. These two particular vehicles are part of 18 brought back by Mike Smallwood from Brazil last year. Coming round in front of you now is the Sexton self-propelled gun, self-propelled 25-pounder field gun. Built on the Canadian Ram chassis, which is very, very similar to the Sherman. It was Britain's answer to the American self-propelled Priest gun, which carried a 105mm gun. Now coming in front of you, coming round, is the Sherman Barb, beach armoured recovery vehicle. The only one working in the world. Only just finished complete restoration last week. It's marked up in the badge of the REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. It was used on the D-Day beaches. The Sexton, the high-speed tractor, and the later Stuarts were all used after D-Day. The early Stuarts have been phased out by then. You can see the early Stuart, very crude, simple, toy-like looking thing, but the suspension was very good, and so they carried on using it. The Sexton again, with the self-propelled guns, 25-pounder field guns. It would not fire on the move. It would, like the Abbotts you've seen, it would be used in batteries and set up behind the line. Has enough storage for about 30 or 40 rounds of ammunition, again to carry the whole crew. There are one or two places I need to erect canvas screens over the to the roof. The driver's position is on the right. Imps show, first of all at Tenterden, then at Beltring. We used to have a guy called Badger Ross who owned a Stuart tank which had a turret on, and he used to squash cars for us. It's the first time we'd ever seen this sort of thing. Anyway, Badger did this for many, many years in this arena and everything else. Eventually he sold the Stuart on to Rick Curtis, who discovered that quite a few things needed doing to the Stuart, but also that the turret wasn't. Harbour Rolls-Royce Meteor engine. It was the sort of last of the wartime successors. Originally there was the Cromwell, which only carried a 6-pounder gun, and the Comet came in carrying the main gun, followed by Russian T-72. Talking about Russian tanks, they are not eco-friendly. Look at those exhausted, 122mm guns, only just come out of frontline service really, still again used by some of the Middle Eastern armies. It's followed by one of the most successful British tanks of all time, the Centurion. This is Centurion Mark V. First used, well, the Mark V is the first used in Korea, but technically the Centurion was the last of the war. Really, you could have said he was firing blanks. Come on, Mr. Nicholas Smith, the driver. One of the arena crew has just got a new sporran for his kilt. Go on, give us a fashion accessory. A T-54, already everything I've said about Russian tanks applies to this. The crude workmanship, the grab handles, the fuel tanks. This came into operation in the mid-50s. Again, not very eco-friendly. But first of all, I think he's going to do his whiz-bang. Now these again were sold on, quite a lot of these ended up in the Jordanian, Syrian and Egyptian armies in the late 60s, early 70s. The Chinese built a copy of these. The Israelis captured many of them and converted them into the T-67I. The Koreans used them, Vietnamese used them. They were used, or captured ones were used by the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Russians. Used in the Horn of Africa, Somalia and Ethiopia, absolutely everywhere around the world. So though it's a crude vehicle, it's a popular vehicle, again, because of the usual things. It's easy to drive, easy to maintain. You don't need to have a degree in physics to do it. Whether that was his bang, I don't know. Well, I never heard it. So round is coming. And I think it might be time to watch that car in the middle. In the old days we used to tell people we'd found these cars parked illegally and dragged them in here. But I don't, look at the state of that one, I don't think you believe it. We managed to do this with a London bus, with a Mini. Hello Jaguar, goodbye Jaguar. Things have always got to be a bit careful about this because bits of cars can get caught up in the mud guards and the track guards, and can, in extreme circumstances too. He often has a problem, his nuts come loose on his wheels. Don't they, Mr. King? Anyway, here goes the car, goodbye car. Quick inspection to make sure there's no bits of car, the tank properly of a car, and it caught fire as the tank went over. There we are, 40 odd tons of tank. Oh, the wheels come off of the car. He's got to stop for some reason. Something is, I can't see from here, something is stuck somewhere. Now many years ago, that little steward I was telling you about that's now converted to the reconnaissance, tearing it away with him. But anyway, thanks for watching. You've still got half an hour of the show to look around things. Enjoy yourselves. We may see you tomorrow. If we don't, we hope to see you next year. Thanks indeed. Have a safe drive home.
Oh,
Take it home with you.
Perfected future.
Are you coming next? Yeah. Are we coming next?
C'est bien. Bueno, me passa atrás.
Oh, dai. Dai. Oh, yes, I'll say. Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Did you see
Nachkommen?
Kannst du sehen. Unsere war Nummer 6 Laufräder, nicht 5.
What are you looking at? Please, what are you looking at? You said somebody once. Come here, please.
As soon as we stand down, driving down the plastic, down to the court road. Yeah. And once we get to this part,
Ja.
Taxi's arrived. Taxi.
Right, let's try that way out. Things all right, isn't it? All right, yeah?
Fire. Was Hese? Das ist Hese.
Fire.
Hier ist ein Quetting there. We need to go.
Too much stress.
Pete.
Der ist viel zu hoch. Du kannst allein schon an den Achsen sehen. Ja?
Es sind verschiedene Museen drin. Auch First World War.
Cool. Our camp.
Still see the hole to the deck now where that
parts. The first one on Saturday is a series of events featuring a small part of France during the dark days prior to Dunkirk. Today takes us back to the same modern career of France. Now in the year 1944, following the entry into the war of the Russians and the Americans, the tables have now turned on the hungry mind of the right. In this, the fourth year of the war, the Germans are now in the lead on all fronts. Defeated in the desert, Italy and now France are held in the final act of the war in Europe. Surprised by the speed and locations of the Normandy landings during June 44, the German military for once is slow to react, throwing units into the Normandy front, piecing and no aircraft. Lacking in firepower, the German war machines are going out.
Ich denke, natürlich kommt der. Kommt nicht diese ganze weg, nur für nichts, ne?
I believe this is the first outing of the German half-traction gun, and I think we had one combination. They're allowed to go quite low. But the obviously is going to come in from the north, so it's probably going to be quite good. He'll just come over the trees. There he comes, yep. Of course, the Lancashire is probably most famous for the Dam Busters raid in 1943. Leave Bombay door open, there. Setting up the battle reenactment, which will take place immediately after the presentation. So if you get bored with us at the front, you can look at all the shenanigans in the background. That's a very unusual vehicle. And we had our first show on the hop farm, and we took up all the space that about a third of the stalls take up now, and that was our showground. The arena was down by the road, and we had probably about 60 or 70 vehicles. It was really exciting. It took place over a weekend. And gradually the show started to grow. I became chairman of the club in '93. Jim Baxter, who's